So let's get into this next section here. Idea number 10, craftsmanship and artistry. And this is the grand finale of the 10 Renaissance ideas that will save America. I talked in the very beginning about my dad noticing how a lot of the tools and the quality of the tools that he was using to build the furniture when we were growing up, how the quality of the tools are going down. And then I talked to him the day and he's like, yeah, the quality of the tools are continue to go down and down and down because everything's just mass produced. And in the Industrial Revolution, they really, really, really went downhill. Because of the Industrial Revolution, we stopped seeing unique one-of-a-kind objects. And we started seeing mass-produced. Nature does not necessarily mass-produce. If you look at snowflakes falling down, it may seem like these snowflakes are mass-produced, but they're all unique. If you look at, maple trees aren't mass-produced. They have a certain pattern that they follow, where it's like each maple tree it all follows the pattern of maple tree, but they're each individual and unique. They're all unique to their localized actualization. And so this is the thing with the handcrafted goods. It's a Japanese concept called wabi-sabi. Excuse me. So there's this Japanese concept called wabi-sabi, and it's just like an embracement of the slight imperfection, like the slight variation that you see. So you want symmetry and you want alignment with these principles, but whenever it's crafted by hand, whenever you see it in nature, things technically don't line up perfectly straight. You don't see straight lines in nature very often. There's always something that's a little bit slightly asymmetrical. And for some reason, that's actually very pleasing to the eye. So whenever you have these mass-produced items, they all look the same. There's no character. There's no individuality to this. And so they would want things to be handmade. And in the Renaissance times, the uniqueness of the artist that they would put into each particular craft, whether it be a sculptor or a woodworker or a mason or all of that, their own individual personality would just slowly seep into their work, and it would make each piece unique. Now, this doesn't mean that they would just have whatever goes, because like I said, they would always try to go in accordance with these universal principles of design. But they had these things called the guilds, and this is where they had quality control. So they wanted to make sure that all of these pieces, that they had the highest quality that they possibly could. And so they could do economic regulation with the guild. And this is something that we don't necessarily have today. All of our regulations are not necessarily, the quality control is not necessarily exactly what they're trying to do with these regulations. But that's what they were trying to do in the Renaissance. The regulations today are, they're environmental, these trade regulations and all of that. But the Renaissance had a much different way of regulating it. They would say, we have a standard for quality of production, that regardless of whatever your style is, if you're going to be here and you're going to paint pictures in my city, you're going to have to paint it to a certain quality. And if not, you're not going to be allowed to sell your goods. And today it's like, well, it doesn't really necessarily matter the quality, as long as it's generally safe and it's not going to hurt anybody and nobody's going to sue you. Sure, go ahead and add that product to the market. And this creates ultimately a weaker economy where we're just ended up, let's just go with the cheapest and fastest thing. And true quality is not cheap and fast. It's expensive and time consuming. And this is it's a very less is more sort of attitude for the craftsmanship. Like, let's do less things, but a higher quality. Quality over quantity. And so they would have these rigorous training and apprenticeships that these people would go through. And they would start at a very young age. And so, whenever the young men were in their early preteens, their family would go move them into the workshop, and they would just spend all their time learning about how exactly to apply all of these principles to my craft. And then these guilds, they would go get political power because they would get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And so they would use all this political power that they would get as the noble elite is falling down and as the merchant class is rising. The guilds get more political power. And so what do they do with that power? They make laws that are going to make it better for the businessmen, better for the entrepreneurs, and better for the farmers. You want it to be as easy as possible to make good quality things and to be able to trade them. Think about all of the regulations we have today. Are they really making it easier, or are they making it harder for the individual to make top quality goods and to be able to trade worldwide? A lot of these are actually holding us back. And I feel like there needs to be a new approach to regulation. And this is something that it's not going to happen overnight. It's something that just by talking about it, we could start to think about what are ways that we could start to improve the regulation to where it actually makes it easier to do business, not harder to do business. This was part of their civic duty. We could keep going back to this civic duty over and over and over again. You want to have a pride in your city. You want to have, I mean, this is like Spain, for example, Spain and Italy. They don't necessarily do a lot of export of staples and like staple goods and like commodities. It's all like these really fine-tuned, specifically area specific traditions of craftsmanship that have been passed down from generation to generation. And these are the things that are holding that economy up. Whenever people go to Italy, whenever they go to Florence, they want to go get a nice piece of Florentine jewelry. They want to go get a piece of Florentine leather work, because they know that these people, if they put the love and the care into that and they pass that down, like Swiss watches, for example, these people, they just put the love into that and the care into that and the attention to detail, to where it gives the city a sense of pride. And so they do this thing, and even today, and I noticed a lot of times whenever I was traveling throughout Europe, you don't really see McDonald's in these little historic areas. You don't see all these chain stores. They would try to keep them out as much as possible. And in my hometown, they're trying to do all this revitalization in the downtown area. And they're adding all these chain restaurants and these chain stores in there. I'm like, that's not good for the local economy. You want local businesses in there. Because yeah, okay, maybe that McDonald's might be able to bring in a lot of money, but is there anything unique that it's bringing to that area? Is there anything, because the craftsmanship is about the uniqueness of it. It only, like a painting from Leonardo da Vinci only comes from Leonardo da Vinci. You get other ones that are trying to mimic that, but there's only one Leonardo da Vinci. And so it's like in your hometown, what is that? There's people in all different areas where it's like they're the only one of that kind. And that product they make, although a bunch of different other people make it, and they make all different types of ways, there's something very special about the way they're doing it here. And so people, when they travel to that area, it has a uniqueness to it. It has its own personality. And so there's a value in that uniqueness. If everything's the same, then it starts to lose its value. And so they would try to apply all of these classical principles and put it into their handcrafted goods. And then the principles, they would develop these characteristics of actual personability, of personality, of uniqueness that would say, look, somehow all of the nature, all of the universal principles of nature are applied into this thing, but yet somehow it's not some boring, mundane product. It's actually somehow beautiful and unique. And they would collaborate with the city and with the church to try to put that everywhere on as large of a scale as possible. They would try to make sure, look, we want our churches in the center of the city to be as high of quality as possible, but we don't want all the churches just to be like a copy of the next church. Each church has to be, we got to take all these principles, and there's certain things that the church has to have, like the shape of the cross, and the general shape of the way the sound goes throughout it, and the general facing of the east. But we also want the church to reflect the own personality of the culture of which it's built in. And the same way with your city hall. They don't want just a copy and paste city hall. They would want the city hall to be handcrafted by the local craftsmen to specifically represent and reflect the values that particular culture had. And that in turn, it makes the culture stronger. Think about all the houses today, about how, you have these suburbs where it's just like copy and paste houses. I mean, just copy and paste everything today. But no, there's something beautiful about having a unique house where it's like, this is the only one in the world. And it makes it feel a lot more like home. It makes you feel a lot less replaceable. It gives you much more of a sense of purpose. It shows you like you are a unique human being. Like you're not just a cog in the machine at that time. And this is part of their goals. And so they wanted to use this to strengthen the city, to strengthen the economy. And they also wanted to adorn the city. So like that thing we talked about earlier, what was that quote about adorn and fortify? Let me see if I could find it. Where is it here? Let me see. Okay. To the Florentine merchant, travel was not merely a means of profit, but a sacred charge to venture forth, acquire the world's goods and wisdom, and return to enriched to adorn and fortify the commune, or else forfeit one's place in the storied republic. So it was about making it stronger and making it more beautiful. And they saw these as deeply, deeply interconnected. And this is why the craftsmanship and artistry, when you think of the Renaissance, you think of things that are handmade and you think of things that are made really well. This is not the time we're living in today. And people are starting to get sick of all these mass-produced items. And we're starting to go back towards, let's have a little bit less things, but have a higher quality of things. They have this this concept of to delight and move. You want each item that you're making, whatever it is, you want it to be able to be a delightful thing. You want it to add quality and value to your life, and you want it to be moving. Like you want to have an emotional connection to this thing. And with that emotional connection to the things that you're creating, it gives you much more of a sense of purpose and much more of sense of a place in your life. And so they would have this idea of, like I said, building off of these universal principles of design, building off of these immutable principles of nature. You would want to retain what comes before you. You would want to go back and revive in classical antiquity. You would want to retain all of the best, but you don't stop there. There was another part to that retain that they would say, and they would have this motto: retain and improve. So it wasn't about like wiping the board and starting from scratch. Take what works. Retain all of the information that has come before you. Know your place, but then seek to constantly improve that and push that forward. That's why the Renaissance art was so good. That's why the craftsmanship was so good. They took all the principles of their trade and they learned the history of their trade, and they said, okay, I've retained all that information. Now how do I improve on it? How do I make it better? If you're in a business, you should know the history of your particular business. You should know the history of that trade, of that product, of the commerce. You should know the history of all about that. And you should learn as much as you could about that. Figure out, how do we retain everything that's been built before, and then how do we build on top of that? How do we constantly improve and innovate? This is the idea of the Renaissance men. And so to add one last quote to this craftsmanship and artistry, we have adorn and fortify, delight and move, retain and improve. These were the mottos of the craftsmen and of the guilds. There's one more. This is a famous quote made by lots of the kings and lots of the popes at the time. I believe it's Latin: urbi et orbi, which basically means for the city and for the world. This was the purpose of your craftsmanship. You had a sense of civic duty. It wasn't just to enrich your family. It wasn't just to enrich your own personal business. It was to enrich the city. And by enriching the city, that also enriches the world around it. It makes it a magnet for people to want to come to that city. And it serves as a beacon of light and a beacon of hope and a beacon of truth to the rest of the world. There's something this city is doing that's worth paying attention to. That's why so many people still travel to Florence and Rome today. But there's certain cities in the world where it's just undeniable. They did something that just wasn't for the individuals at the time. It was for the glory of the city, for the whole entire world. And that's the essence of your civic duty. And this is all motivated by a religious aspect, a sense of obligation to your family, obligation to your church, obligation to your city. There was no individualism. The individualism comes out naturally. You're naturally an individual. You want to be able to be free to think, and you want to be able to be free to have your intellectual freedom, where you could go search about ideas that maybe other people weren't searching into. That's a great thing. That comes out naturally. You don't necessarily have to encourage that. Just allow that to happen, and it'll happen on its own accord. But what you have to constantly reorient towards and constantly focus towards is this: we're doing this not just for me. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for the church. I'm doing this for the city. And ultimately, I'm doing this for the world. And that was the essence of the civic duty that these guilds instilled into their apprentices. For the city and for the world is the essence of the civic duty of the individual. There's this collectivism. It has to be good for everybody. If it's just good for me, you're not considering everybody else around you, and you don't live in a vacuum. If it's good for everybody else, it's also going to be good for you. If we go back to the episode where I talked about Lorenzo de' Medici, where he goes and he gives that speech whenever they're trying to assassinate him, and he talks to all the people. He says, look, didn't what I do was good for you also? Don't overthrow me, overthrow the other people. What they're doing is not good for you. What I'm doing is. So although yes, he was the richest man in the world at the time, everybody else was also getting richer too. So it wasn't just for him. The individualism will naturally emerge. You don't have to try to force individualism. We're all individuals by nature. But we have to realize that it's got to be for the good of other people too. And it's got to be good for the other people for the future. It's not just like a temporary goodness. Like your future self is a different person than you are today. It has to be good for the future as well. So it's about like you know your place in the world, and you're at a unique position in time and space. You learn from the past, and then you incorporate that into the present for the purpose of building a better future. That's what craftsmanship is all about. It's about taking your time because you realize, I want this product to stand the test of time. I want this service to stand the test of time. I'm not just trying to make a quick buck. And that's one of the downfalls of capitalism. I would like to think of myself as a very capitalist type person. I love free market and I love free exchange. But the one thing that I don't like about capitalism, my number one critique, is the low quality of the goods that it's produced. It's this, let's make a quick profit now at the expense of the future. We'll just make this thing, you'll buy it, it'll be cheaper for you to buy now, but then you end up having to buy another one later on. Let's try to make things that are going to stand the test of time. So there's a couple quotes from art history here that we could go to about craftsmanship and about artistry that we could end the section with, that I feel like will really just help round off and polish off all of the edges to this idea and help, because like I said before, these people have a much more beautiful and poetic way of talking than what I do. And so by quoting these masters of ideas and these masters of thought and philosophy and culture, that'll help articulate these ideas far better than what I possibly could. So let's start off with Plato. The craftsmanship who shapes beauty with skills imitates the divine, creating works that elevate the soul and bring honor to our city. Elevated souls make honorable cities. I mean, that's just a concept. This is a concept that Manly P. Hall had about, he was like this very esoteric thinker from the early 1900s. And he talked about how if you build like dystopian cities, it creates dystopian mindsets, and that like spirals downward. If you make noble cities, that creates noble mindsets and it spirals upward. Like I have this theory that, or this concept that your environment affects how you feel. How you feel affects how you think. And how you think affects how you act. And how you act affects your environment. And so there's this constant cycle. And so how do you actually improve the whole entire cycle? You pick any point and you start to improve it. Now you could go say, I'm going to try to think better thoughts, or I'm going to try to feel better things. Those are kind of abstract. They're kind of hard to do. But one of the things that's very concrete is you could say, I'm going to try to make a more beautiful space. I'm going to try to take my time with whatever it is that I'm doing, with the task at hand, and try to make it higher quality. By doing that, that makes you feel better. And then that gives you a better thought. And then that thought produces a better action. And then that action produces a better environment. And it starts to spiral you up. This is what they talk about, imitating the divine, ascending upwards, elevating the soul. And that's what brings honor to the city. When you walk into the city and you look out and you say, I respect that. I was listening to this interior designer talk the other day, and he was talking about how he chooses the furniture and all the pieces for his room. And I remember looking at this guy's room, I'm thinking like, man, this is just really, really amazing what he's built here. This is just such a great room. And he says, I look at every single piece that I bring to my room and I ask myself, if I put this piece alone by itself in an empty room, would I be able to look at that piece and say, I respect that? I never thought about it that way before, but that really struck me. You know, do you respect that? Is it a respectable piece? And if you fill your life with those things, where it's like, do I respect that? Then the room as a whole, whenever you walk into it, you would just have this respectable feeling. And other people will get that sense where they walk in and they say, I respect that. And then there's a proper reverence. And you want to take care of the things around you. If things are all messy and they're untidy, they're dirty, they're kind of haphazardly put together, that's not a respectable environment. That's not a type of person, that's not a type of environment that's conductive to good thought. They say, you know, if you dress like a slob, you're going to think like a slob. There's something that happens when you put on a nice tailored suit, and you put it on, you button it up, and you got everything that's custom made for you. You start to sit up more straight, and you start to talk more clearly. You start to hold yourself with a sense of respect. So this is about the adorning and fortification of the individual, of the home, of the city. And actually, it changes the mind and the heart of the people that inhabit that. It's incredibly valuable. It's just so valuable. Here's another quote from Vitruvius, the great Roman architect. Architecture combines strength, utility, and beauty. The craftsman's skill in creating harmonious buildings uplifts the spirit and strengthens the state. This is not like some sort of fringe theory. This was the centrality of architecture and design theory throughout all of the ancient world. How many architects today are like, I want to build something that has strength, utility, and beauty. I want to create a harmonious building that uplifts the spirit and strengthens the state. Look at the buildings that they're making around you. Are they uplifting your spirit? Are they strengthening your state? See, this is a type of regulation that we need to put in. We need to make sure, like, hey, don't build this building in my city. You need to speak up about that and say, look, let's build something better. We need to have our architects start to focus on what's actually valuable. It's not just like who could get the building made the cheapest. Who can make the building the most beautiful? Is it going to be more expensive? Of course. Is it going to be worth it? Absolutely. An uplifted spirit equals a strengthened state. You cannot separate the two. And a downtrodden spirit, that equals a weakened state. This is something like in the battlefield. What do? They have flags that they wave. There was this quote from The Art of War where he talks about something along the lines of words, they just kind of fall short on a battlefield. A battlefield is too big. So what do? They wave banners and they bang gongs and they sound trumpets off. Because what that does, when you elevate the spirit of the soldiers, that strengthens them. And so you want everything in your life, everything that you add to your life, to elevate and to strengthen you. So look at the craftsmanship in your house. Maybe you're not a person who would regard themselves as a craftsman. Maybe you're not a person who physically makes things with your hand, but you're a person who buys things. You're a person who has things in their house, who has things in their life. You're a person who wears clothes. Look at the clothes that you're buying. Look at the items that you're adding to your house. Do they uplift your spirit and strengthen your state? If not, then it's probably a good idea to start taking inventory of all of these things and to slowly start moving out the things that aren't helping and allowing space for better quality things to move in. Aristotle says, artistry through poetry and sculpture brings pleasure and wisdom. For beauty in creation teaches us to see the order of the world. They have this concept of beauty is a condensation of reality. It's about pattern recognition and relevance realization. This is why a great work of fiction could sometimes even be truer than an actual historical account, even though it's a made-up fable, even though it's a fairy tale, because it condenses a pattern of, and you could say, look, I understand these characters didn't technically exist, but the pattern that plays out of how these characters behave instills so much more than any one particular study of one person's life could. It's like that's where the myth comes from. And so because of that condensation of reality, it's like a supernatural reality. And this is why that disenchanted worldview that we have is not actually helping us out at all. We need to go back into the enchanted worldview, back into the fantastical worldview, because these condensations of reality, they actually help increase our pattern recognition. And this helps us realize what is actually relevant to us today. Because what's relevant to us today on a large scale is today is always moving forward in time. Today is not static. Today is in motion. Today is in flow. Reality is not static. We're moving towards the future. And so what's good for just today in a concrete, temporary state of like, let's just make profit today at the expense of tomorrow is not actually what's truly good. The ultimate relevance realization is we have to realize what's relevant tomorrow as well. It's about opening up your mind. And so you have another quote here from Alberti from The Art of Building. Beauty is that reasoned harmony of all of the parts within a body so that nothing may be added, taken away, or altered, but for the worse. Basically what he means by this is, you have an inventory of everything around you, and you have everything that you need and nothing that you don't need. That's perfect harmony. And that's what a beautiful painting doesn't have anything superfluous in it. It doesn't have unnecessary detail. Sometimes in a painting, more detail just for the sake of more detail doesn't make it better. More complexity just for the sake of more complexity doesn't make it better. It's about everything together. Everything is working together for one unified whole. All of the family unit is working together for one unified purpose. All of the city is working together for one unified purpose. And so That's a beautiful thing. All of the notes of the song come together. If you pull any of the notes out, it's just a static existence and the song falls apart. They're in a constant flow and they're always moving towards. They're always moving towards the future. And it's only whenever all of the parts work together in harmony, where if you pull out one of the notes, the song falls apart. And if you add in another note, the song falls apart also. It gets too crammed. And so having just that perfect number of notes in the sequence, that's the most beautiful type of song you could listen to. Bringing everything together is a religious act. And this goes back to the religious idea of having the church in the center. The incorporation of charity into the meritocracy. It's like saying, yes, the most valuable thing, we're not going to focus on the bloodline. We're going to focus on the value that the people are bringing. It's not just like, were you born into this particular class? If you bring value, you're allowed to ascend and you're allowed to get more wealthy. We're going to reward the people who are bringing good ideas in. We're going to reward the people who are producing excellence. Well, that widow over there isn't producing any excellence. That orphan isn't doing anything. What do you do? Just discard them? No. You bring everything together. You have to incorporate them too. And that's why the church stood at the center. The incorporation of charity into the meritocracy is a religious act. The incorporation of all of the parts into the whole. The polymath is a religious person. You take everything around you and you all incorporate. You want to go through the inventory of your life. All the things that we live in this consumer world where we just gather up all these things. And a lot of the things aren't that beautiful. And if they're not that beautiful, then I would argue they're not that good for us. So we need to, one of the things that we could do of how to apply this to our lives is just to go through our house, go through our lives, go through our wardrobe, go through our junk drawers and say, is this helping me or hurting me? Like, does this provide any value? If I got rid of this particular note, would it make the song any worse? Would it actually give more breathing space? Sometimes it's actually an act of emptying out, not adding things in. Sometimes improving the quality and the craftsmanship is actually about omitting things more than including them. Sometimes it's just like, just strip everything down to the bare bones and like see the structure that we're working with here. Because you can't even make structural improvements until you empty out the room first. Just like empty it out. Figure out, get as down to as minimal as possible, and then bring that together and build off of a much more solid foundation. Pico, who wrote the Oration of the Dignity of Man, here's another quote that he has from the Renaissance Manifesto. Through artistry, man mirrors their creator, crafting works of beauty that lift the soul to contemplate the divine and glorify the city that nurtures them. Once again, they're connecting divine contemplation to glorifying the city. They see the church and the city as something that nurtures them, and they see the patterns as something, the patterns of the creator as something to be instilled into the things that you do. Beauty means to transcend our mundane existence into a realm of childlike enchantment, adding both meaning and wonder to our everyday life. It's about not just going fast, fast, fast. That's the problem with hustle culture today in the cities. We don't have enough time just to slow down and appreciate the beauty of a sunset. It's about transcending the day-to-day, transcending the mundane into something where you get that childlike enchantment again. And you think, wow, this is amazing. That's what craftsmanship and artistry is about. And it, like, once again, it doesn't mean complex. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean add in all the bells and whistles. You could have a very simple thing, a child's laughter, a beautiful sunset, a song sung just with a voice, no instruments. There's these parts of life that are just sitting around a fire with your friends at night and looking up at the stars. It's not about these extremely complicated ideas. It's actually very, very simple. It's about taking the time to slow down and really appreciate the beautiful. Get past that mundane existence of like everything, like there's a utility, and if there's not a utility, I'm not going to add that in. What's the utility of sitting around a fireplace and looking up at the stars? What's the utility of holding a baby and caring for it and loving it? It's not about it's not about what you're getting from it temporarily or like how it's going to monetarily benefit you. It's just because it's a beautiful thing. And that's the most meaningful thing of life. The beauty of it. That's what the craftsmanship is about. It's about We have this idea in the modern world of form follows function. So basically, just make it to where it gets the job done and nothing else matters. That's not the Renaissance ideal. The Renaissance ideal was you want to have a great experience while you're using it. This is something that, I have this MacBook here. This is something that Steve Jobs really understood. You want it to be beautiful. Whenever he was designing all of these products, he wanted the inside to be beautiful too. He wanted the inside and the outside to be beautiful because he wanted you to have a good experience. And think about how that took off. And the product so far is standing the test of time. It's become the most successful product in the whole entire world. Beauty. That was the point of the craftsman. Here's an amazing quote from Michelangelo. And this is going to be the final quote of this section. I mean, this is just so amazing. So beautiful. The minds of these people, profoundly deep and caring about what they did. Here's what he says. The beauty I carve in stone is for God and Florence. Through craftsmanship, I strive to make the eternal visible and to honor the city that gave me this gift. So he's doing it for God, and he's doing it for his city. He's not just doing it for himself. That quote, to make the eternal visible. That's about studying history and then building for the future. There's a pattern that goes throughout history, and this is what they were doing when they were trying to study ancient antiquity. There's a pattern of the rise and the fall of the nations. There's a pattern of human behavior, and it's an eternal pattern. And if you just focus on the here and now, you'll miss it. And so a great work, what it does is it takes those eternal concepts and it actually makes it visible and tangible. So you can grasp it. You can say, there's something there. And you know it's something much more greater than it's like the parts combined actually equal a sum greater than their parts somehow. Somehow like the paint, it's just some random colors on a canvas. But somehow when you arrange them in a perfect pattern, it becomes much greater than just like some random colors and on a random cloth and a random shape put around it. It's like, no, the frame and the composition and the colors and the meaning, the story behind it. It's so beautiful. And it's not just something that I did for me. It's something that I did for God, I did for my city, and I did for the future. That's Michelangelo's quote right there is the perfect example of civic duty, and it's the perfect example of urbi et orbi, for the city and for the world. He does it for Florence, the city that gave him that gift of being able to build such monumental works of art. But also God gave him that ability too through his creative faculties. And so he does it for God, he does it for the city, and he does it for the whole entire world. And all of that by putting the time and the effort and the energy into making the ordinary beautiful through craftsmanship and artistry. That puts you in the perfect place right where you are. It doesn't matter what time period you're born into, what type of world you're born into. There's always an opportunity you have to take your time with something. And to, instead of just rushing about, always on to the next thing, always on to the next thing. I have people in my life who are really, really like hustle, go, go, go. They're always in a hurry. I say to them sometimes, if you're in such a hurry, why don't you just start like picking out why don't you just go buy a life insurance thing, go to the graveyard, pick out your spot and start digging your grave if you're in such a hurry to get through life. Like, why not just slow down and enjoy it? Maybe do a little bit less. You put yourself in the perfect place right where you are. Because that's all you got anyways. It's just right where you are. And so you take that, and then the craftsmanship, it's not even just about into making things. How do you make your bed? Does it uplift your soul? Does it create order in your room? Or is it just like, I'm gonna hop out of bed and leave everything a mess? So it goes into every single area of life. How do you make your food? Do you present a nice plate? Do you take your time? Do you have pride in the meals you eat? Or are you just eating out of, it's just calories? I see all these hustle bros online. I just eat just because of calories. It's just fuel. It's just fuel. And I think, how miserable of a life you must have. Why not sit down and enjoy a beautiful meal? Like, it's such a huge part of our life. Why not have it be why not have these huge parts of our life that are supposed to that have turned into such mundane, ordinary things? Why not instill beauty back into those? To me, that's the most important part of life, is just to be able to enjoy the day to day, because that's all you have. That's all you have is right where you are, right here and right now. And so the craftsmanship and artistry, it's so much more than just, I'm going to go physically craft something and I'm a carpenter. If you're not a carpenter, or if you're not a sculptor, you're not a painter, and you can't see ways to apply this, there's something wrong you're doing with your life. There's something there's something missing. If you've lost that childlike wonder with the world. This is a quote from this is a quote of the popes about Michelangelo, where they would say, they would use this name Terribilità, where it's like where they would describe his personality and his style. It's like a terrifying awesomeness, like just like a amazing wonder, where it makes you feel small when you look at it. It's so big and so amazing, it's actually kind of scary, and it makes you feel small. And like that's true awe and wonder. Like think of how big and wild the world seems when you're young, and then when you get older, it's like, oh, we got everything figured out. The world is just a small place. All the places on the map are figured out, and we lose that. We lose that just in being able to just get lost in the moment, and to be able to just truly enjoy the mundane, and to transcend that, and to add beauty back into that. To me, that's what the craftsmanship is all about. It's about taking the time to add beauty into every day of life. To me, beauty, that's the existence, and that's the difference. To me, beauty is the difference between existing and living. And I feel like a lot of us are just existing right now. We're not truly living. If you want to go from just existence to like a flourishing full life, it's not about having a lot of things. It's not about having a really complex things. I think it's just about going back to the most simple things and finding the beauty in that, and then carrying that beauty into as many areas of your life as possible.